That's interesting. Okay. Good morning. My name is Douglas Griffin. This is my Sunday school class. We're in the book of Leviticus. Leviticus is the book that stops people from reading the Bible. Everyone gets excited. They read Genesis, they read Exodus, they get to Leviticus and go, all these rules, done. Okay, but there's a purpose for them. God is teaching them, well, a couple things, like three things that are very important. One is I've got to give you rules that will help you stay alive as a culture. Like eat, don't touch things that have been dead for several days, and because they didn't understand disease, germs, and there's just ways of I've got to preserve you as a culture, things that you just don't know that would be hard to explain. What's a germ? Since they didn't have microscopes, and so just trust me, don't do certain things. Um, to stay alive. I also want to teach you how to treat your neighbor. Very important um, rules that will keep you all from destroying one another, right? So don't go into your neighbor's house and steal his stuff. Don't do that. Um, so how to treat one another, how to stay alive personally, and then how to have a relationship with me so that judgment doesn't come on you, so that you don't walk into darkness because I am light, and every time you do something that is contrary to my ways, you're walking into darkness and you're putting yourselves in danger because I created the universe. I know how it works. So it's like the person who designed the car saying, don't start it with a screwdriver. That's going to mess things up. Don't stand in a pool of water while you're charging your battery. It's going to kill you because I know how I designed this car and so God's saying, I know how to design the universe. These things are going to kill you. So don't do them because you're messing up your relationship with me, and I'm the creator of all these things. So I'm going to address your relationship with me, your relationship with your neighbor, and then just basically safety. Good morning, Tammy, and all you guys, Susie and Pingo, um, and just basically things that will personally sustain your life. Okay. What it doesn't address is personal sins. And that's going to be hard to believe in a few chapters. He's majority talking about your relationship with God and relationship with your neighbors. And then just things that will keep you from dying. Later, God says, here are the things that messes you up. And he talks about lying, pride, gluttony, drunkenness, things like that, that are just going to mess you up. But in Leviticus, he's dealing with things that will keep you from dying, your neighbor and God. Okay. Um, so, hi, good morning, Tracy. So, let's begin. So, the first three chapters, the burnt offering, the grain offering, and peace offering, um, are just general offerings. They're literally just offerings you want to bring to God. The burnt offering, the first burnt offering recognizes, just I'm generally a sinner, but you've made this atonement for me. There's no specific sins that are being addressed. It's just I'm bringing an offering to God as gratefulness. Um, the grain offering, I'm recognizing that you've blessed the work of my hands and that the bountiful crop I have is because of you. Let me offer some of that to you. The peace offering, I want fellowship with God, and just like if you were my neighbor and I was offering you food, come in, let's have a drink together, let's have some food, we'll have some pizza, we'll sit around and talk. I'm doing the same thing with God. Just a fellowship offering, peace offering with God, not addressing any specific sin. Then in chapter 4, says, okay, now let's talk about specifics. And he addresses the sin offering. And this week in chapter 5, he addresses the trespass offering. And what's the difference between a sin and a trespass? Well, we'll see that it's the difference between the thought and the action, basically, the thought and the action. So now he was addressing the sin offering. If these basically if these thoughts come to your mind, if you decide to do these things and you're really aware of it, then you want to bring an offering to the Lord. And now he's addressing the effect of, and you can't disconnect them, but they're almost two different things in that I thought about slapping you, and then I did. And the thought and the action are connected. So he's kind of addressing the action and then the effects. Now, what do you do about it once you've done the thing? Okay. So we're in Leviticus chapter 5. I want to read Isaiah chapter 59, verse 1 and 2. It says, "Behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, nor his ear heavy that it cannot hear." So God's saying, it's not like I can't rescue you. It's not like I can't hear your prayers when you're saying, "Oh, I need help." And he says, but your iniquities have separated you from your God. The reason, in some cases, why there aren't results to your prayers, he says, your sins have hidden his face from you, so that he won't hear. So it's your thoughts and actions that are leading you out of God's protective umbrella. So it's raining and you step out from the umbrella and go, "Why am I getting wet?" Well, because you stepped away from where I've given you protection. I've created this umbrella to keep you from getting wet, and you stepped out. You've done something. It's not like the umbrella doesn't work. It's you stepped out. Come back under. He's basically saying there. So it's not like I can't do anything. You stepped away. And me at this point answering your prayer will confirm that will make you think your action is correct. Oh, I can step out from under the umbrella anytime I want, and I won't get wet. You said don't drink and drive, but I drank and got totally drunk, and I drove and made it home okay. And God's like, see, if I answer your prayer at this point, if I help you at this point, your disobedience will be confirmed. You'll think, oh, you know what? I can play with fire and nothing will happen. I can, I can, So he says, I can't, I won't hear your prayer right now because you've moved away from I've told you what will keep you safe. In Leviticus chapter 4, verse 1 and 2. So this is the previous chapter. It says, "Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, If a person sins unintentionally against any of the commandments of the Lord, in anything which ought not to be done, and does any of them." Okay, so he's first addressing, now the word sins unintentionally, we talked, this is sinning in the moment as opposed to premeditated sin, as opposed to, I sat in my basement for 6 months assembling my AK-15 rifle, and I marked out all the people in town I was going to shoot, and I wrote out their schedules, and I went and bought a mask, and I went out and killed. Okay, so that's a premeditated. I knew what I was doing. I knew it was wrong. That's why I hid in the basement. And I thought about it for a long time. We separate premeditated from crimes of passion done in the moment. So somebody steps in your foot. I'm just making this up, and you shove him. Okay, that wasn't your plan. It's still wrong that you knocked that person over. Still wrong, but you hadn't thought about it for 6 months. Oh, I can't wait till that person stands next to me so I can smack him. Okay, so we talk about crimes of passion that are in the moment that are wrong, but not that you were planning for years and years and knew this was wrong. You know, you still know in the moment it's wrong, but your mind doesn't have a good chance to stop you. It's so quick. Somebody smashes in your car while you're driving, you go, ah, maybe curse words come out of your mouth. It's wrong. You know it's wrong to do that, but that wasn't your plan, which is different than I've been planning this for a long time. I know that it's wrong, and I'm embracing it. So when he says sins unintentionally, he just means in the moment. You just made a bad choice in the moment. So that was chapter 4. Um, so the sin offering, which was in chapter 4, covers the motivation for the sin. So first, let's deal with all the anger and stuff that came up in your heart that caused you to do it. Then chapter 5 is now let's deal with the effects of what you did. Okay. In 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7, and I'll get to the beginning of Leviticus in just a minute. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at his physical stature, because I refused him. When Samuel went to go anoint David as king, he didn't know who he was going to be anointing. He says, one of the sons of Jesse. He said, don't look at the outside, because that's what man looks at. It says, for the Lord does not see as man sees. Doesn't mean God can't see the outside. He says that's not how he chooses to look at somebody. He says, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So God's saying, I'm looking at your heart. In fact, in Jeremiah 17, verse 9 through 10, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? So I'm going to deal with and Jesus began to remind people about committing adultery in your heart and where all the sin starts. I, the Lord, search the hearts. I test the mind, even to give every man according to his ways, according to then the fruit of his doing. So it starts in the heart, but then there are fruits, the effects of it. So interestingly, chapter 4 and 5 are kind of dividing this in half, the heart and then the actions. In Matthew 15, Jesus is trying to explain this difference to the Pharisees, because they're only looking at the outward appearance, and Jesus is saying, well, it starts in the heart. You're just looking at the person on the outside because that's easier to judge. Well, you ran into my car, but let's deal with the fact that you were on your phone, and that's why you ran into the car. That was this sin initially. You were on your phone, and then you weren't looking, and that's why you ran into the car. So he says, let's do both, because everything has a root. Matthew 15, 17. Do you not yet understand that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and it's eliminated? So, because they were judging what people were eating. Okay, what comes into your mouth, it goes in your stomach and it gets eliminated. It comes out of you. He said, that's not the problem. Verse 18 says, but those things which proceed out of the mouth, they come from the heart. The things that proceed out of the mouth, they come from the heart, and they defile the man. So it starts on the inside, all the anger, the frustrations, the pain, the jealousies, that's where it starts. And then an action proceeds from that. For out of the heart, verse 19 of Matthew 15, for out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. But it starts here, what you're meditating on all day long, what you're thinking about, that 6 months you're in your basement putting together your assault rifle. That all that time is, actually, obviously that started before you decided to assemble it. But so, and it says, so I want you to deal with both your heart and the actions. And so that's kind of how he's dividing the sin offering and the trespass offerings, chapter 4 and chapter 5. Because then the murders, the adulteries, the fornications, the thefts, the false witnesses, the blasphemies, and let's look at these things. What Jesus addressed as bad. What Jesus said, these things are bad. Murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. So things that Jesus brought up that sometimes Christians don't center on these things. We have a different list of things that we say are bad. And I'm not saying they aren't bad, but we should focus on what Jesus focused on. Okay. Matthew 7, chapter 16, says, you will know them by their fruits. So you'll know by the result. You judge a tree by the fruit. But do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? No. He said, no, that's the fruit of that cactus is a bunch of thorns. I'm not going to get grapes from there. Even so, every good tree bears good fruit, but bad trees bear bad fruit. So the root of it is why the fruit is bad. Ezekiel 36:26 is the last one before we start the chapter. It says, but I'm going to give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh that's moldable. So I'm going to come, if you let me, and give you a new heart so that all the thefts and false witnesses and all that won't proceed out of you as often because you have a new heart. So these are hard to explain uh, to people at that time who had never seen a heart. Like so he's trying to explain these concepts. Sin offering, successful offerings, like there's two parts to the sin. Um, so the trespass offering, well, now he's dealing with the effects of it, the action and the actual action, and then the effects of the action, the actual slapping, and then the pain that you caused. And and so the trespass offering requires also, besides the offering itself, confession. You have to say what you did, and then compensation and restitution toward God or toward your neighbor. Okay, so Leviticus chapter 5, verse 1. If a person sins in hearing the utterance of an oath. Now, an oath. Um, this is somebody who is swearing to do something bad. They're or are saying what they did. I killed that man, and you hear it and you don't tell anybody. Or if you hear somebody say, I'm going to kill that man, and you don't tell anybody. Or if somebody blasphemes against God. And God was really big on blasphemy. This, because if you're hating God and you saw me part the Red Sea and you saw me rain down manna and you saw the glory cloud and you don't like me, that's going to be a problem. Our relationship's not going to be a good one. So if you hear someone committing blasphemy, and also you're going to mess everybody else up because you don't believe in the rules. I think it's okay to steal. I think it's okay to kill. I don't have to listen to this God. I can do what I want. Okay, that's going to be a problem. So if anyone sins in hearing, but you heard someone either blaspheme God or threaten to kill their neighbor or admit that they had done something, uh, or, well, let me read this other example. In Judges chapter 17, verse 1 through 2, it says, Now there was a man from the mountains of Ephraim, whose name was Micah, and he said to his mother, The 1,100 shekels of silver that were taken from you. So the mother had been robbed. Someone took 1,100 shekels of silver. He says, The 1,100 shekels of silver that were taken from you, and on which you put a curse. Meaning she said when she discovered it, whoever took these, I curse them. I hope their life is horrible. Right? You're cursing that person. That a horrible thing happens to them and they never use these again. So she swore an oath about and put a curse on that person. He heard it. He says, and on which you put a curse, even saying it in my ears. He said, Here's the silver with me. I took it. And so I heard how upset you were, and I didn't even tell you, oh, I took it. So he sinned. There's like a double sin going on. She's cursing the person who did it. But he says, if a person sins in hearing the utterance of an oath, meaning you know you're the one that took it. So you're not only sinning in because you heard the crime, but you sinned because you know you took it and didn't say anything. And here's what's interesting. It says, Here is the silver with me. I took it. And the next verse said, the next line says, and the mother said, Oh, well, maybe you be blessed by the Lord, my son. Like she was not upset by that. Now, the reason they record this is because this led to a series of really bad things. She had a son who did bad stuff, and she encouraged him. We have to understand there's two types of verses in the Bible that are descriptive and prescriptive. Descriptive means they're just describing something. It doesn't mean that they're prescribing that we do it, like you get a prescription from the doctor. Here, you should take these pills 5 times a day. There's a difference between prescribing something as an action that I want you to do and simply describing, oh goodness, that man vomited. It doesn't mean go thou and do likewise. It doesn't mean you're supposed to do it. And people have trouble distinguishing that sometimes in the Bible. They think, well, it says here that, and he stabbed his brother. It's like, that doesn't mean we're supposed to do that. That's not why that scripture is there. So here's a case where she was totally blessing everything her son did, and it led to a series of things, bad things, because it was the type of mother that no matter what the son did, it's like, nah, no problem. Okay. But he sinned in hearing the oath and not confessing what he had done. So it says if a person sins in hearing the utterance of an oath and is a witness, whether he was seen or known of the matter, if he does not tell it, he bears guilt. Telling this person has threatened to kill all these people. We do this all the time when there's a crazy person on the loose, and they say, if you know something, if you hear something, tell us. If you've heard somebody grumbling and saying, I'm going to shoot up the courthouse, please tell somebody. So because that protects the community. Um, but if you've heard somebody say, wow, somebody took my stuff, and you know that you did it, and you don't confess, if you found some stuff on the ground, and then you hear somebody say, "Oh, I lost all mine," and you don't say, "Oh, I found it. It was me. I found it." So maybe you didn't take it, but you found it, and you know the person's missing it, and you don't say anything. You're sinning. So now we're talking about the action. Um, okay, so the types of Jesus, they tried to trap Jesus when he was on trial at the very end of his life for things that he had said, and they're using the law against him because, again, if you sin in hearing or the utterance of an oath and you don't confess, or you don't if you don't tell about it, he bears guilt. Here's how they try to get Jesus with it. In Matthew chapter 26, verse 61, the Pharisee is Matthew 26, 61. The Pharisee is questioning him and saying, and this fellow said, talking about Jesus, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. So he thinks he is hearing Jesus make an oath. That's bad. I'm able to destroy the temple of God and build it in 3 days. Now, that's not what Jesus said. He didn't say, I can destroy the temple of God and I'll build it in 3 days. He said, if you destroy this temple, I will rise in 3 days. So the high priest in verse 42. So he thinks he's doing what the law, right? The guys, I heard him make this swear, and it's my job to tell on him. Verse 62. And the high priest arose and said to him, do you answer nothing? Because somebody's made a statement and you can't break the law by not answering. Okay. Do you answer nothing? What is it these men testify against you? But Jesus kept silent. And the priest answered it and said to him, so first, Jesus keeping silent because what the man said is not true. Jesus didn't say that. But the high priest answered and said to him, I put you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of the God, because these are things that you've said. So you may not be answering what that man said, but you've made this oath, and now you've got to. Are you said this? Did you blaspheme? Because if you hear a blasphemy, or you utter a blasphemy, you're obligated to confess it. So I put you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. And they think, we're going to trap you because you're going to break. You've got to say something because you blasphemed. And so how can it be the Messiah if you're breaking the law? And Jesus said to him, because Jesus has to answer, we heard this oath. You must say something. Jesus said, it is as you said. So, yes, I said that. Under the law, I'm not going to break the law. If you heard me say something, yes, I said that. Nevertheless, I say to you. So I'm going to back up. That wasn't a blasphemy. I wasn't being blasphemous. Here's how I'm going to back it up. Hereafter, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven to get vengeance. They Some people think he's talking about when he was going up to heaven. Well, yes, you're going to be here on that Mount Olive when I go up to heaven. But he says, no, coming here, sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven, which is two things that the Messiah was supposed to do. He's going to be sitting at the right hand of God, and then he was going to come and get vengeance on the enemies. That's what they were waiting for him to get vengeance on the Romans. So you're going to see me coming on the clouds of heaven, except it'll be me leading the Romans against the city of Jerusalem, which happened 40 years later. That was God. Now, he's not literally on a horse. He's coming on the clouds of heaven, which is a metaphor, but for the power of God who's leading an enemy to come judge, which God did with the Syrians. He did that with the Babylonians. The Egyptian, he used different groups to come and judge Israel. So you're going to see me doing that. So then you'll know it's not blasphemy. So you think you trapped me because I uttered an oath and I'm not confessing it. But no, you're wrong. I'm going to prove that I'm keeping the law, that I am the Messiah. So if you hear an oath, number one, Leviticus verse 2, or if a person touches any unclean thing, whether it is the carcass of an unclean beast. So I'm again dividing it into three things. God's trying to teach the people how to treat their neighbors so that they don't destroy one another. He's trying to teach them how to stay safe so that they don't destroy themselves. And he's trying to teach them how to have a better relationship with God so God doesn't have to come down and judge them. So if a person touches any unclean thing, whether it is the carcass of an unclean beast or the carcass of an unclean livestock or the carcass of unclean creeping things, and he's unaware of it, this is not something you planned for a long time. This is something you did in the moment. So unaware of it, you just didn't realize. He also should be unclean and guilty. You're unclean. So you got to go wash. And again, these are whole things that civilizations didn't understand. Germs and all that stuff. What's that? Or if he touches human uncleanness, whatever the uncleanness with which a man may be defiled. And in Leviticus 12 through 15, he spends 3 chapters explaining all the different ways, leprosy, and all the different things that can defile a person that he's trying to make them aware of to keep them physically safe. And he is unaware of it. When he realizes it, then he shall be guilty. So once somebody come up, hey, you touched that thing, and oh, I didn't know that person was dead. Or, now you're guilty, now that you know that you did it. Okay, good. So here's how you take care of it. But he gives one more thing. Or if a person swears, speaking thoughtlessly with his lips to do good or to do evil. So that's what I was talking about earlier. So first, if you hear the oath, but now if you're the one that swear and said something crazy in the moment because you were upset, we had an example of that when we were looking at 1 Samuel chapter 25. That's on Sundays when I was preaching. David had been protecting this man named Nabal, Nabal. But Nabal didn't know it, except no one was raiding his crops. No one was stealing his sheep because David was living out in the wilderness and protecting him. So David sends word to Nabal and says, hey, why don't you give me a little bit, now that it's your feast day and you're shearing the sheep and you're about to have give some to my men who've been here all year protecting your crops. We should share a little bit in it. Whatever you have. Verse 10 of 1 Samuel 25 says, and Nabal answered David's servants and said, who is David? And who is this son of Jesse? There are many servants nowadays who break away, each one from his master. Like, I don't know. You used to work for Saul and then you ran off? Well, you just some runaway slave is all you are. And so I don't have to give you nothing, basically what he's saying. Verse 11, shall I take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed from my shearers and give it to men when I don't know where they are from? I don't know where you're from. Who are you? Right? Just nasty. And knows that he's been successful this year. And somebody obviously must have been protecting and helping him because normally he would have been raided, all this. He knew. But I don't know you. Verse 21. So when David hears this, it says, now David has said, Surely in vain I protected all that this fellow has had in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belongs to him. And he's repaid me evil for my good. May God do so and more also to the enemies of David if I leave one male of all who belong to him by morning light. Like, I'm going to kill everybody. I'm going to kill his kids. I'm going to kill all his servants. I'm going to kill him. Now, David wasn't planning on saying this. He hadn't been for 6 months thinking, ooh, I can't wait till the ball turns me down. I'm going to, in the heat of the moment, now he knows he's wrong, but it wasn't premeditated. All this stuff just came out of him. He swore an oath thoughtlessly with his lips. I'm going to kill them all. Well, he needed to bring an offering. He needed to go and confess later once he realizes, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Right. In the moment, you don't know you shouldn't have said it. It's just coming out of you. But later, you realize, and I shouldn't have said that. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Right. So here's how you take care of the action that you have done. So last chapter is the thoughts and things that lead to the action. Now is the actual action, which God's trying to separate into two parts. Okay, Leviticus chapter 5, the second part of verse 4. Whatever it is that a man may pronounce by an oath, and he's unaware of it, meaning he didn't mean it. That it came out before he got a chance to think. When he realizes it, then he's guilty in any of these matters. Once you realize it, oh, I'm so sorry, right? Leviticus chapter 5, verse 5. And it shall be when he is guilty in any of these matters that he shall confess that he sinned in the thing. So you got to confess. You go to people, I'm so sorry, I did that. I lost my head. I just got upset. So you confess. So it's not talking about how to take care of it. Confession and then restitution once you judge the damage. Okay. He must confess that he has sinned in that thing, and he shall bring his trespass offering to the Lord for his sin, which he has committed. A female from the flock, or a lamb, or a kid of the goats as a sin offering. So the priest shall make atonement for him concerning his sin. Leviticus chapter 5, verse 7. If he's not able to bring a lamb, then bring to the Lord for his trespass, which he's committed, 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. And so God he's always looking at, give what you can, always. Bring a big cow, bring just the lamb. Just bring this, find a turtle dove or a pigeon, whatever. So I'm not caring. It's the action that I'm concerned about, not how much you gave. Always, that's how God is. But verse 11, if he's not able to bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, then he who sins shall bring to his offering 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour, like make him a little pancake. Bring that. He shall put but don't put no oil on it, nor shall he put frankincense on it, for it's a sin offering. So before those first 3 offerings, which is just your free will giving to God because you love him, those first 3 offerings, they said, put frankincense, because it's a sweet smelling savor. I'm just so glad. Look how you came of your free will and just decided to give. I'm just giving out of love, not out of obligation. I just feel like giving. That is a sweet savor to God. But your sins smell. So I want them to smell. So don't put any frankincense in this and make it smell good, because it doesn't. So now we're talking about the actual sin. The first offerings were just your free will giving to me because you love me. But now we're addressing your sin. So don't try to make it smell good. Skipping to verse 14. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, if a person commits a trespass and sins unintentionally in regards to the holy things of the Lord. So first, you did something to your neighbor, or you committed, all right, in some way, or you swore unintentionally, or you heard your neighbor say something and you didn't react to it, or all these things, or you knew. Now we're going to deal with how you deal with me. So in regard to the holy things of the Lord, these are things that belong to the sanctuary, or your service to the Lord. You've said, I will do this for God, and you're going back on your promise. Or there's something God has told you to do, like bring a lamb and you forgot to do it, or maybe it had a blemish. So as far as your offerings to me are things that you promised to do to me, do for me, here's how we'll deal with that. If I've told you exactly what to bring or what not to bring, and you've sinned, and they use the word unintentionally, meaning you didn't, there's a presumptuous sin where you know exactly what you're doing and you've thought it out. And there's passionate sin in the moment. You just made a choice in the moment to grab something you shouldn't have grabbed. Okay, it's still wrong, but God treats us in two different ways. Here's an example of something where God has said, do not do this or do this, and someone didn't listen to him. In Joshua chapter 6, right after the city of Jericho fell, when they marched around Jericho 7 times and the city fell, in verse 17, he says, now the city shall be doomed by the Lord to destruction, it and all who are in it. Only Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all who are with her in her house, because she hid the messengers that we sent. She had respect. They all knew these are people of God, and they're ready to go to war with the people of God. So they're, in fact, going to war with me. So they have to be destroyed. But Rahab was like, no, we're going to protect these messengers because we know you're from God, and you represent God, and I'm not fighting God. So she gets to stay. She gets to live. But it says, verse 18, and you by all means abstain from the accursed things, though. There are idols and all sorts of bad things that they're doing because they worship demons, they worship devils, they worship things that are not real. Don't grab all that stuff because you'll become like them. Don't do it. Oh, so abstain from the accursed things, lest you become accursed when you take of the accursed things and make the camp of Israel a curse and trouble it. So all their evil idols and don't touch them. But the silver and gold and the vessels of bronze, verse 19, and iron, they're consecrated to the Lord. They shall come into the treasury of the Lord. So if you do find just silver coins and gold, that's not an idol. Bring that into the treasury of the Lord, and later I'll tell you what to do with it, but give that to me. So don't touch their bad stuff. The good stuff bring to me. Now, let's not forget in Numbers chapter 15, verse 30 says, but the person who does anything presumptuously. So there's a word we translate unintentionally, and the things we translate presumptuously, like premeditated, like you knew exactly what you're doing. That's a problem. It says, whether he is native born or a stranger, that one bring reproach on the Lord, and he should be cut off from among his people. So in Joshua chapter 7, God had given specific instructions what to do, what not to do. Verse 1 says, but the children of Israel committed a trespass. See, that trespass offering, their action regarding the accursed things, for Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, took of the accursed things. Even though God, again, they see God, there's a cloud and glory, and he's speaking from it, So you are thinking, God can't see me. He said, so the anger of the Lord burned against the children of Israel. I'm just qualifying when you're sinning in the face of someone. When you see the policeman on the side of the highway and then you flip him off and you speed 90, see if you can catch me. Well, there's going to be a problem, right? But that's not the same as it's a totally empty highway. There's no one around and you're not even noticing how fast you're going because there's it's still wrong, but it's not the same as when you look at somebody's face and you do it right in their face. Okay, so verse 21, when they find Achan, they finally track him down. And it's like, why did you do that? Why did you go against what God said? In verse 21 of Joshua 7 says, when I saw among the spoils a beautiful Babylonian garment, and there were 200 shekels of silver and a wedge of gold weighing 50 shekels, I coveted them and I took them. And there they are, hidden in the earth in the midst of my tent with the silver under it. So I not only took it, even though God said, do not take it, I hid it in my tent and buried it because I knew it was wrong and I didn't want you to find out. And so that's like, how are you going to, you think God can't see that? So again, that's different. He says, if you just happen along and find something and then you later find out, oh, this belongs to that person, then you need to make restitution, give it to the person. But if I told you, do not take that, then that's a problem if you're doing it right in my face. So he separates it from unintentionally, like you do something in the heat of the moment, which is different than good and well what you're doing. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 38 says, anyone who has rejected Moses' law died without mercy on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Like 2 or 3 people said, yes, because this person is doing it in the face of God. This person can't stay with us because he doesn't even care if God says it doesn't do it. So that's the problem. So Leviticus chapter 5, verse 15, again, the second part of it says, then he shall bring to the Lord as his trespass offering a ram without blemish from the flocks. with your valuation, like how much you think. So if I said, bring that offering to me, and you chose not to bring that offering to me, or if I said, don't take that, but you took it, I want you to evaluate how much, because there must be compensation for what you did when it can be measured in that way. So your valuation in shekels of silver, according to the shekel of the sanctuary, as a trespass offering. So you have to bring it back. You can't just say, I'm sorry. And that's again, you smash into somebody's car, you go, sorry, and then you drive off. It's like, no, you have to pay damages for the, you can't just smash my car and then here's a dime. See ya. Like, no, you can't give me $1 when you blew up my television set. Here's $1, bye. So you have to determine in our society, how much does that, what's the compensation, right? And he shall make restitution for the harm that he's done in regard to the holy thing, and shall add 1/5 to it. So not only have to pay back what you took, you have to add a little bit to it and give it to the priest. So the priest shall make atonement for him with the ram of the trespass offering, and shall be forgiven him. Leviticus 5:17. The person sins and commits any of these things which are forbidden to be done by the commandments of the Lord. So I gave you my commandments: thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery. Though he does not know it, yet he's guilty. So their translations, though he does not know it, but you're guilty, and you should still bear your name. Again, meaning it was in the moment. You didn't realize you were going to do it, but you did it, and you're certainly guilty. You have to make restitution. So when the sin which they have committed becomes known, this is Leviticus chapter 4, verse 14. When the sin which they have committed becomes known, then the assembly shall offer a young bull for the sin and bring it before the tabernacle of meeting. So once it's made known to you, in the moment you didn't realize, you realize what you're doing. Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, so this got to be an offering. Leviticus 5:18. And he shall bring to the priest a ram without blemish from the flock. With your valuation, how much did that really cost? And what I did. So the priest shall make atonement for him regarding his ignorance in which he erred and did not know it, and shall be forgiven him. Because sometimes you can take some not realize it, and sometimes you're doing it in the moment, not realizing what you're doing. And they're just separating it from doing it in the face of God. God showed up to you the day before. Don't go down Figueroa. And in the morning go, you know what? I think I'm going to go down Figueroa. You know what you're doing, right? Which is just different than in the moment as you're driving, going to, I went down a one-way street. I went the wrong way. Sorry, you got it. That's a problem. But you didn't sit up all night thinking, I can't wait to do that nasty thing. Okay, I'm just going to read a little bit of Leviticus chapter 6 because it's in the same thing. Because halfway through chapter 6, he changes. This is still the same thing, dealing with the same trespass offering. We talked about your own personal mistakes, things that you're doing that's messing you up, things you're doing to messing God, and now he specifically addresses the neighbors. Leviticus chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, if the person sins and commits a trespass against the Lord by lying to his neighbor about what was delivered to him for safekeeping. This is almost like your Amazon package was delivered and you took it and said, what Amazon? The neighbor took it, or you took the neighbor's thing. I didn't see no package. What are you talking about? So if something was delivered to him for safekeeping, now they don't have locks on their doors and deadbolts and all that stuff. So if you were going on a journey, I have to go to Jerusalem. I'll be back in a month. Can you watch my stuff? Because people can just bring their house. Or here, I'm going to give you this package. I'm going to give you this. Please watch it. And then when they come back, go, I didn't see nothing. I didn't. So lying to his neighbor about what was delivered to him for safekeeping, or about a pledge, or about a robbery, or if he is extorted from his neighbor. So you stole from your neighbor, or you're extorting your neighbor, or you're lying about something your neighbor gave you, or if he has found what was lost and lies concerning it. Hey, did you see my gold watch? No, I see no watch. But what's that on your wrist? Oh, this is my gold watch. Okay, and swears falsely in any one of these things that a man may do which he sins. Then it shall be, because he has sinned and is guilty, this verse 4, that he shall restore what he has stolen, or the thing which is extorted, or what was delivered to him for safekeeping, or the lost thing which he found. or all that about which he sworn falsely, he shall restore its full value, add 1/5 more to it, little tiny penalty tax, and give it to whomever it belongs on the day of his trespass offering. So the day you bring your trespass offering to the Lord to apologize, also restore. It's not, I'm sorry, it's not enough. Give it back. And he shall bring his trespass offering to the Lord, verse 6, a ram without blemish from the flock with your valuation as a trespass offering to the priest. And this is why in Matthew chapter 5, Matthew 5, verse 23, it says, therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, don't just come to the altar with your gift. If you remember, oh, I never paid that man back. I never returned his television set that I stole. You can't just come to, Lord, I'm so sorry for it. Because that's an easy thing to do, to go to God and say, oh, I'm so sorry I robbed that man. Did you give the stuff back? Oh, no, 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 it's mine now. That's a problem. So if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift before the altar and go your way. And first be reconciled to your brother, then come and offer your gift. So this is what Jesus was talking about. You know, how we treat our neighbor is important, and the Bible spends a lot of time on that. This is the last verse, and then I'll be done. So the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord. This is Leviticus 6, chapter 7. And he shall be forgiven for any of these things that he may have done in which he trespasses. So, dealing with his offerings, the things that personally mess you up, the things that mess up your relationship with God, things that mess up your relationship with your neighbor. This is what he's going to be dealing with all throughout. Okay, thank you so much for listening today. Uh, this is for the two people that actually listen on the days I preach the sermons at my church, or they're not like, okay, I've had enough. 45 minutes, that's enough. Um, we're continuing First Samuel. At the service, First Samuel, we're now in chapter 27 of First Samuel. And on Wednesday, I will start at 4 o'clock instead of the normal 7 o'clock, just this Wednesday coming up. But you can watch it at any time on Facebook or on YouTube or anytime if you'd like to listen. And we're in the book of Luke. So, but just for this Wednesday, I'll be starting early. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm just reading what Jan Skinner Horton wrote. Okay, thank you so much, and I will see you soon. All right, God bless. Bye-bye.